cross that North River Bridge, you enter a watery part of the world where we like to say that the only constant is change. It's a place where there's certainty in the uncertain. And 5 years ago, this place changed swiftly. It's a story we all know too well. Florence sank her teeth in the down east, gnashing at the banks, shoving water up through the marsh and into 13 unincorporated villages. She dumped nearly 30 inches of rain and left in her wake damage and flooding like we've never seen. Homes destroyed, businesses at a standstill, and livelihoods in jeopardy. Folks here were battered and bruised, but if you know anything about down east, you know these people are strong, they're resilient, and self-reliant. And the days, weeks, and yes, years that followed, like their ancestors, they held close to one another. Neighbor helping neighbor, sharing supplies, helping one another rip out the carpet, and tear out drywall. It's kind of hard to believe that even 5 years later, some folks are still picking up the pieces. They're still trying to put their lives back together. Florence took away a lot, that's for sure, but she couldn't dampen the spirit of this place. As Karen likes to say, the anchor holds. I've heard from Ernie Foster up in Hatteras that every generation has a storm that defines them. For Hatteras, it's Isabel. For Dorian, or for Oak, it's probably Dorian. For this generation down east, it's certainly Florence. She was a wake-up call. She started a long list of hard questions. Were we prepared enough? How can we be better prepared next time? What do all these changes that we're seeing mean for our daily lives in the next 10, 20, 30 years? How can we adapt to hotter summers, higher water, and heightened storm impacts? And for many, maybe the most important question is, will my children be able to make a home here? So much has changed since Florence came ashore. We've gone from asking, how are we going to afford our insurance, to wondering if we'll be afforded the opportunity to even buy it. Families have watched the backyard their kids used to play in turn into a marsh that their grandchildren play beside of. As families who descend from Diamond City on Shackleford Banks find themselves asking the same question their great-grandparents asked. What will I do if salt water gets in my well? With every northeast wind, we worry about our graveyards washing away. Fishermen watch as flounder and shrimp move north and wonder what they'll be able to fish for next year. We notice old pine forests that hem in our marshes and our sounds turn to graveyards full of skeletons of 100-year-old trees. And countless people, probably a lot of folks here today, wonder if you should grade your house, by how much. I wonder how you scrape the money together to do it. 10 years ago, we were asking what was happening around us. 5 years ago, we were asking what we could do to fix it. Today, we're asking how can we buy more time? Karen, most of you know her, this museum's director, and I'd argue probably the fiercest advocate this coast has, may ever have, says that today's conversation is a byproduct of a project Baxter and I worked on back in 2016 and 2017 called Rising. It's funded by North Carolina Sea Grant, together with a gaggle team of community leaders, scientists, and anthropologists. Rising just documented the change that people were witnessing every day. What resulted was a traveling exhibition that combined science data, oral history, and fine art photography. Our exhibit was hanging on these very walls when Florence arrived. A few days after the storm passed, Baxter and I drove from Newbern to Harper's Island. We opened that door back there, and we could smell it before we could see it. Black mold. It's covering this place floor to ceiling. It's a smell and it's a sight I'll never forget. Sure, Rising might play a small part in why we're here today, but the truth is, today's conversation is inevitable. There's a different kind of storm brewing. one of eroding shorelines, migrating fish, intruding saltwater, and inundated roadways. Down east is smack dab in the middle of that storm's path. The people who live here aren't the only folks who know it. In the last 5 years, Down East has attracted the attention of every major academic institution in the state, and state agencies have turned a keen eye in our direction. Ongoing research projects that are participating or partnering with and working in our communities include UNC's DEEP project, who's working to better understand the impacts of flooding. The Sunny Day Flooding Project has installed flood sensors that many of us saw yesterday at hotspots in Down East to track how often floods are occurring outside of hurricanes and extreme weather events. Our superintendent and Cape Lookout is working with folks from Western Carolina and NC State to protect and preserve the village's historic structures. Western Carolina has piloted a vulnerability assessment study for Down East homes. Students from NC State have contributed to ghost forest awareness and the installation of a chronologue site here on Soundside Trail to produce a time-lapse record of change. Duke's Whistler Network has included Down East as a partner in their effort to build a network for convergence research about saltwater intrusion and sea level rise. Eastern North Carolina Sentinel Landscape is looking for opportunities to fund resilience efforts, given the importance of Down East to supporting Cherry Point, PT-11, and Atlantic Outline Field. NOAA Science Collaborative is considering the impacts of stormwater on our estuary system. And even in our schools, our teachers like Evan Ferguson in Dare County and researchers at Duke Marine Lab are working with students in high school and middle school to share stories of personal and community resilience. I'm sure I've left out a lot of folks. But the point is I'm grateful to see the interest and engagement of so many researchers as we work to open the doors of communication. We must work together to better understand the science and its intersection, place, and people and policy. I believe that the work we're doing here today can be a foundation for resilience building in unincorporated communities across the state and maybe beyond. It's a privilege to know this place. It's an honor to love its people. It's a gift to share in this place's distinct culture. And as a community, as researchers working here, and as policymakers making decisions about this, it's our duty to preserve this place as best we can for future generations. I do you justice, Karen. So we did this conversation 5 years ago, right before Florence. Rising was hanging here, and we did a community conversation. It was the first time we'd come together to talk about what we were seeing. You know, everybody was talking about it in their houses, but we'd never come together as a community to say, like, put a name to it and say, what is going on with those trees? And when we were organizing that conversation, we knew where we had to start, and that was with fishermen. And fishermen were some of the first people that we knew of who were saying something odd is going on. Fish are moving. The stripping season is longer. And in Down East, there's somebody to listen to as a commercial fisherman. So it's appropriate that we start with that panel today. I'd like to welcome Jess Hawkins up here, who will be moderating, and we'll introduce the panel.
Those members of the panel can come on up and choose to do something.
They have been put.
See who we got. Marty. Can everybody hear me okay? There. Welcome, fellas. Yep. Morning. Yeah, for those of you, that got in here, and I'm a fisheries biologist, and I I do run a eco-tour business. I realized during my regulatory history with the state of North Carolina, I realized that education is such an important tool. It's a lot better than the stick. So I'm always I'm an optimist. So I believe the carrot can make a difference. So thank you for inviting me to be here today. Turn it over to these men and that they can share their knowledge. Before we get into the introductions, you know, when I came fresh out of college, well, actually I grew up in a place called Bath, which is our oldest town, and I grew up on the water, and so that fed the blood in me to want to be around the water, and I love to fish, so I might be able to share some stories with you like these men are going to do about how things change. And so the water in Bath is a lot different than the water here. You know, this is indeed, like Ryan said, a special place. You know, this is down east, and I always will be a bit daughter, no matter how long I live here. You know, I've lived here in 1996. You know, there's only 2 down east in our country. So this is one of the 2. And so this is indeed what I learned when I got moved here, is that this is indeed a special place, and it's special because of the people, mainly, but also because of this location. And so you're fortunate to be exposed to people that know this area, and now we're very fortunate to be able to talk about how these people might need to adapt, how communities and local government, state, federal government can adapt. And one thing when I learned when I graduated out of college is that North Carolina fishermen are very, very flexible. That was before we even talked about resiliency. You know, resiliency is a code word now. You see it come and go. I mean, you see it come, hopefully it won't go. But fishermen in North Carolina, especially commercial fishermen, had to be flexible to make a living. And back when I started in the late 70s, we were at a peak of seafood production in our state. There are some fishing groups that are recreational in nature They advocate that because of that decline during the 80s up to the mid-80s, because of that decline, our resources have been depleted, and that the resources need help, and that we need to further restrict certain types of fishing. So you're looking, people, when I first came into this field, fishermen in North Carolina had a lot of flexibility, a whole lot of flexibility. We had pollock and hake that were being caught off Wanchis, and now they're probably off New Jersey somewhere. And so we had a striped bass fishery in the ocean that was very, very, very prolific. We had developed management schemes to how to handle that. And so that is no more. There's not been striped bass landed in the ocean in 10 years of record, so on record. So things do change. And so these men here will tell you about how environment and other things possibly have resulted in them in changing their business models and maybe even the way they conduct their lives. Because some of them live in very exposed places that are very close to nature. You know, and with my faith, that's where I'm closest with my Creator. I love being on the water. I feel at home on the water. I get away from the business. I can't speak for these men, but I feel at peace there more than anywhere, almost anywhere I can be. And I think that's in my blood. Probably in these men's blood. So enough of me. So we're going to talk about how things have changed since Florence. Florence was definitely a definitive game changer, just through the amount of rain and slowness of the running. And so these men will share with you how things have changed since then. So if you could you introduce yourselves and tell the crowd a little bit about yourselves, and I'll shut up.
Thanks for having me. My name is Ryan Speckman. I'm co-founder of Local Seafood, which is based in Raleigh. We're a seafood processor and distributor. What makes us unique is we sell exclusively North Carolina seafood. I send my own trucks to the coast, pretty much every corner of the coast, multiple times a week. Got a truck at the coast right now, getting fish, but we cover everything pretty much from Wanchis all the way to Brunswick County, and everything in between. And we sell everything to restaurants and grocery stores in the Triangle and the Asheville area.
Thank y'all for having me. My My name's Adam Tyler. I'm born in Carter County, North Sea Level. We're not even a hospital anymore. So I've been around here a long time. I'm a commercial fisherman, and then, 7, 8, maybe 9 years ago, I started Core Sound Oyster Company as well. So I've been running around Core Sound, paying my good sound most of my life.
My name's Hardy Plyler from Ocracoke Island. I was raised in Gates County. Spent 4 years in Chapel Hill and came fishing in 1973. Been a commercial fisherman ever since. I've managed Ocracoke Seafood Company for the last 16 or 17 years. Just recently retired. I'm not quit fishing, but I'm just recently retired. Now, I have been lucky enough to know a lot of old timers down in Corsine, Julian Bryan in particular, and a lot of people from Watchees and Ocracoke and Hatteras fished long before there was any fish science. And they knew what was going on. They knew it from being out there, they knew it from listening to their mentors, and a lot of times that knowledge gets pushed to the side. And I'm going to try to bring up some stories that I've heard in the past to try to document some of these changes we're seeing on the coast with frequency and strength of hurricanes and the effect of that, and what really affects fish populations that can't be quantified.
Thank you. Thank you all for taking time out of your days to share your knowledge. Karen had said I wasn't able to attend the first session, so Karen sent some transcripts as to what was discussed last time. I think Adam was here and part of that early discussion. So one of the first questions for the panel, if you can each answer individually, is how have you seen things change from your perspective from the topic of this session? So maybe from the storm or climate or what you see in the fish you're trying to chase. So Hardy, you can start on your end. What have you seen change in the last 5 years, or even go back before that? You saw it changing before that because you weren't here the first session we talked about this.
I'm going to go back a ways. Julian Bryan had a tremendous memory of what went on down here, both building fishing traditions. And he told me in 1954, Hurricane Hazel hit down in the Wilmington area and raped Conrad County. In 1955, they had 5 eyewall hits on the Crystal Coast. There wasn't a fish, or crab, or shrimp for 6 years in this area. The Gilgos, the Masons, and the Gilligans all migrated to southwest Florida. Their descendants are still there, mullet fishing. After that, in the late 60s up until 1985, when we had Hurricane Gloria, there were very few storms on the Outer Banks, and fish flourished. Murray Fulcher, who was a fisherman from Ocracoke, lived in sea level, worked out of Atlantic for many years, ended up running the Ocracoke Seafood Company. He told me many times that fish populations are controlled by natural cycles. And these cycles may trend over 20 years, and they are influenced by climatic events, hurricanes, cold stun freezes, salinity changes, droughts, many things that are in the natural world that affect these fish, over and above regulations by marine fisheries. And they're also influenced by environmental factors, pollution, agricultural runoff, municipal wastewater, and industrial pollution going into our sounds. When you have a big rain event in coastal North Carolina, in the farmland around coastal these sounds and rivers, and you get those pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers washing into the waters, it severely affects fish populations and the ability of these fish in these nursery areas in Pamlico Sound in these rivers. I was talking to Eddie Bo Wheatley, whose family had run the Menhaden fishery in Beaufort for 100 years. He said they would have good years and they would have bad years. He said most of the time the bad years were lined up with bad hurricanes. And so a lot of times these factors get ignored
by your fish scientists and your marine fisheries when they go to compute how many fish they think are there, or how many fish they're going to give you to catch, and these sort of things. Most fishermen know better than that. The only way that marine fisheries can document what's being caught by the commercial sector or by the recreational sector or by mortality events is the trip ticket program, which the commercial fisherman has to fill out every day he sells fish in the fish house. Species, pounds, size of fish. Really, it's guesswork on all the other. It's guesswork on the recreational fisherman. It's guesswork on catch and release mortality. It's guesswork on natural mortality. And so many times a commercial fisherman gets to carry all the blame and all of the consequences of these regulations. And it's really put our industry in a position where the traditions of working through a generational industry where young men would start out working in the fish house, dragging a box if he wasn't big enough to pick it up, get on a boat with his granddaddy, because his daddy didn't have time to mess with him, learn the fishery, get his own boat, and move up the chain. That has all changed. Many young people don't see a future in fishing. Part of it is natural, part of it is regulatory. We still work, as Jess said, we're resilient. We can diversify quickly. And as Adam said, he has moved into shellfish. And so, I feel in Ocracoke, we have a tourist industry and a retail store that basically allows our fish outs to operate. The wholesale part of the business, when they took the finders away from us 5 or 6 years ago, the wholesale part of the business has been severely cut. We hope, I'm confident there is a future in commercial fishing in North Carolina. We push hard in our organizations and our lobby groups in Raleigh to try to make the legislators and the state government understand what really goes on out here and what really affects these fish populations. And we hope for the future that fishermen can continue to make a living. It is important. Sometimes I tell them in Raleigh, I can need the state of North Carolina allow an industry that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars a year in the eastern part of the state, not only with ex vessel value, but economic diversity created by that product. How can they allow that industry to disappear? In the coastal counties where very few other jobs exist. So we keep fighting, and we keep pushing, and we keep trying different things, and we keep going out there. And but I am confident that in Ocracoke we can continue to run our fish house and continue to support our community. And as it goes for Carteret County and Pamlico County and Dare County and all of Currituck County and all the coastal counties, and support commercial fishing. And it needs to be a statewide, consumer-based campaign. We need to know, and Ryan has done a tremendous job in Raleigh promoting North Carolina seafood. People need to be aware of the quality of it, and we hope we can all continue to keep this industry alive.
Thank you, Hardy. For the other two fellows, one of the three questions I want to ask you if we have time is, what have you seen change? And then I'm going to ask you how you adjusted. And then the third is what your outlook is. So Hardy, he'll refresh that as he does see hope. So Adam, what have you seen change the last 5 years, or even when you first got down here? How many years you been down here? Fishing? 74? Gotcha. So what have you seen change?
I was born at sea level, yes.
What?
I was born at sea level.
Yeah, so you went away and you came
I
back.
went for the service, but after that I come back.
Good deal.
But I think one of the things Hardy spoke on earlier, and I just want to reiterate, is one of the biggest challenges that I think we see on the coast is development, hardened shorelines. I believe, and I got some incidental evidence that I'm working with a couple of scientists on now, that living shorelines is a way better from a protection for our coast and resiliency. Give you an example of development down here in Carter County. Some of y'all know my dad lives there. There's a field next to his house, been mowed for 40 years. We played baseball with as kids, big field. That will not hurt. But when you go half a mile towards the shore to that bar dock is, they're allowing development right there in the marsh. The dump trucks are coming right in every day, back filling up the marsh and all this stuff. And I say, well, this is up here half a mile from the water. It won't hurt that you're allowing these people to come in here and, you know, dirt and sand. I mean, how is this possible? These are things that, honestly, I don't understand. And then I asked one of the guys that built a home down there, and he told me, he said, son, he said, when you know the right developer, you got enough money, anything can be done. And that conversation was had about 6 weeks ago. So, as already alluded to, the commercial fishing industry, we always get blamed for everything. It's not all us. I'm not saying that we don't bear some burden there, but it's not all us. It's the people coming in, back filling these marshes and destroying the ecosystem. And I see it all the time. I'm in Corsound, I'm in Jarrett Bay almost every day. This is the first day in forever I haven't been up there to be here. It's changing. Yes, the shorelines are eroding, saltwater intrusion. Those things are occurring. But we can win this, but it's going to take the help of people, the consumers, the demand for fresh seafood, and more importantly, honest politicians.
Thank you.
So change is, I started my company in 2010, so it's about 13 years old. So relatively small data set compared to these gentlemen up here. But I was around seafood a little bit before that, living in Terrell County. One of the things that I learned right off the bat, I brought a cooler full of head-on shrimp to Raleigh, and like the third customer argued with me that those were not shrimp, those were crawfish. And so right then and there, I knew that we had a big uphill climb to educate consumers about North Carolina seafood. Most folks had never seen a head-on shrimp before. So we had to also teach people that shrimp aren't available year-round. A lot of these fish aren't available year-round. There's seasonality in seafood. And, that was a big uphill climb. But we did it. I mean, finally we got there. In North Carolina, when you, there's throughout the season, there's certain things you can kind of depend on. We expect certain fish to show up, certain fisheries to shine. Typically, we were educating the public back in the early years of our company that shrimp are generally available from about July 4th to about Thanksgiving. Outside of that, it's spotty. Well, I mean, really in the last 5 years, we've seen the shrimp season in North Carolina kind of shift from a summer-fall fishery to a fall-winter fishery. We're seeing more shrimp landing in the winter than we have previously, and I don't remember what the statistic was, but I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, folks started shrimping above Hatteras on the beaches there, and they started catching shrimp. And they may have always been there, but the shrimp fishery has kind of changed from what I've seen since 2010. Bottom fish is another thing. Bottom fish are very reliable for us during the winter months, really almost year round for the most part. But in the last 4 or 5 years, we've really had a hard time getting any bottom fish. Bottom fish are your snappers, your groupers, sea bass, triggerfish, things of that nature. I probably bought more. Traditionally, we would buy all of our bottom fish from the southeastern part of the state, so basically from Carter County south. That's where most of our bottom fish were coming from that we were purchasing. Now I probably bought more triggerfish out of the Wanchese area that are coming north of Hatteras than I have anywhere in the southeastern part of the state in the last 2 years. So I don't know what the shift is. I mean, I'm kind of the sounding board because I talk to people in lots of different parts of the coast on a daily basis. So I get feedback from a lot of these folks. And folks have told me there's a little bit of lack of effort out there. A lot of fishermen have retired since COVID started. Fish, shrimp, some of your pelagics, and we just have to shift and adapt and sell what's available. What guys are catching. but there's not a whole lot I can change on what's available. But we have to educate the consumer too on this is what's available, this is what you can eat. And some of those things that you're used to getting in the grocery store, they're not available in North Carolina right now. So.
Thank you. You know, for those of you that might not be a fish squeezer or love fish like these men or myself, is if you pull yourself out, North Carolina is unique. A lot of people don't know that because we get compared to states like Florida. Florida does it this way, like Emily. Well, North Carolina is unique. So ecologically and in terms of habitats, you'll get more into the habitat with other experts this afternoon. But it's unique and it has a great, because of diversity of habitats, you can have diversity of fish. And so fishermen have known that, so they will catch fish X, and if fish X declines, they might go to fish Y. Fish Y, then they go to fish Z. And North Carolina fishermen, what I learned when I got out of college working with fishermen, is that North Carolina fishermen had a reputation of going wherever the fish were. Like we had shrimpers that would go to Key West to catch pink shrimp, which is the only other place that pink shrimp occur in commercial quantities on the East Coast besides here. So we had fishermen that went down there to catch them, and then we had flounder fishermen that would go up and down the whole seaboard. They actually set a quota for summer flounder, which is an ocean flounder, for the whole United States, because they were willing to go north where the peak abundances were to help capture that fish. So the reason I'm telling you all that is that North Carolina is unique. Its history of fishermen is such that in the first explorer that came here, Lawson recognized that recorded the fishery, recorded the great diversity that the Native Americans, they encountered the fish. And so when you young folks are laying your base, trying to determine what is true or not, spreading that, try to incorporate the history of our area in the biogeography, because we are a unique state if you decide to stay here. So, next question. Well, one thing that I was taught by a guy named Warren Pilkey, some of you might know of him, when I was in school, he taught me some stuff about coastal geology. He says, Hawkins, the only thing I'd say is constant about our coastal area is change. So he said, you need to know, you need to adapt with what you're trying to learn to the changing environment. And so then when you come to fish, what makes it even harder about fish? And Alan Powell can tell you when they're under the water, they move. So you got a biologist trying to chase an animal that's under the water, that's moving all the time, and you're trying to quantify what is the ACL, the annual catch limit, that fisherman can catch to allow that fish to be sustainable. So it's almost an impossible job. And so, but with great technology, the intelligence we have, we try to do it. So the next question for these men would be, well, how have you adjusted to those changes? And some of them have already alluded to that. How have you adjusted to the changes you've seen in the last 5 years? So, Adam, start with you.
Most of it, I used to be a gill netter and shrimper stuff, and the changes for me, really the hardest thing was losing our inshore flounder fishery due to regulatory changes. That was something that me and a lot of other men here in the eastern half of the county really depended on to make it through the summertime to the fall fish and mullets, other things started picking up, and maybe sink netting in the ocean for different species of fish. So I just got so frustrated with the whole mess, I started an oyster farm. You get so frustrated with the regulatory agencies. Everything we try to tell them is just accidental because we can't put it on a piece of paper. We can't document it. We can tell them, but it makes me talk about them pine trees out there in the yard. So for me, switching to aquaculture, just keep myself on the water and try to instill into my son some sense of the Down East heritage. That's why I make a transition and move into this and really focus on oyster farming now more than anything else, because regulatory are just not going to allow my son at this point in time to be able to start a family, make a living on the water without something besides shrimping or gill netting.
Artie, have you adapted over to Ocracoke?
In Ocracoke, several of our fishermen clean fish for the local restaurants. You're seeing more fish houses go to processing fish, filleting fish, getting into that market of value-added product. And so that's helped us a lot. As far as diversification, it's difficult to have gear for 4 or 5 different fisheries during the year. Shifting over is not a problem. Being able to maintain it with capital is very difficult. Like I said earlier, many fishermen have just given up, and you don't have the youth recruitment in the industry that you used to have. But value-added product is something that the state has pushed, and it's a way to increase what you are catching with the few fish that you can catch. I will say, I want to go back to talking about how water temperature has changed fish migration, if I can. The water in Pamlico Sound this summer was 86 degrees at one time. Nobody's ever heard of water being that hot in Pamlico Sound. Back in the late 70s, as Jess alluded to earlier, there was more fish caught from 1976 to 1985 in the history of North Carolina. One of the reasons for that was every winter it was so cold that every fish on the East Coast, every trout, every croaker, every bluefish was south of Howard Shoals. Water temperature, 3 or 4 degrees is a huge difference. It makes fish move. They're not going to stay in the water temperature they're not comfortable with. And so you had a scenario where you had deep water and you had 40-degree water against the beach, and that trout wants to be at 46 to 49 degrees. They were in a corridor right off of Howard's, and they were schooled up tight. And so there was some unbelievable catches of fish. Now, those same trout don't even come past Duck Pier. They don't even come into North Carolina. Same with the rock, same with the croakers, might make it down to Willow Shoals. First southwester in March, they turn around and go back to Chesapeake Bay. The white shrimp, Southport, used to be about the north range of white shrimp. Now they feel like they're in the Chesapeake Bay. That has become a nursery area for white shrimp, and when water gets cold and they come out on the beach, they catch them from Currituck Light south to Howard. That's unheard of. So water temperature change and the increase in the water temperature has made a huge difference in what's available for us, what we can catch.
Adam, didn't you run into some temperature-related effects with your aquaculture, clam mortality or something like that? So if you share that, how it might affect the aquaculturists.
As Hardy alluded to earlier, it was hot this summer, the water temperatures. I've doing some research with our state shellfish pathologist, and they've got some monitors up there. And they had some of the people up there working with them. I said, man, how hot is this water? I said, I've got 86, 88. I just got a little thermometer from Walmart, so it's not the equipment they have. This was 10 o'clock in the morning, and it's 10 o'clock and it's 92 degrees. And that's in Jarrett Bay, one of your primary nursery areas. And so we start seeing mass mortality events with what we're trying to raise, grow. They just die. I mean, honestly, it just gets too hot for the oysters. And the clams as well. I mean, we've had some, Ron and Tennessee came some clams, and they were good when they left. By the time they got to Raleigh, they weren't so good. They had decided to give up the ghost, so to speak. And those are hard lessons that you learn doing these things. But water temperature, as Harvey alluded to, it's definitely a game changer. And I mean, that's the hottest I've ever seen Jarrett Bay, Core Sound. It was this summer. I mean, it was bad. So if you can imagine what that place was like with no wind at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, what that sea surface water temperature would be. I went home and went out the air conditioning. I didn't want to find out. But it was like that for weeks here.
All right, Ryan, talk about how you adapted and what Adam said.
So adapting, we're always continuously educating consumers. So that's just a continuous process and will never end. But as Hardy alluded to, one of the things that's really been on the forefront of my mind in the last 5 years, particularly since COVID, and we had to change tremendously our business model for a brief period of time. But really looking at the value-added side of things, because my business was founded on fresh seafood. I get our truck will be in Wanchese or Carter County, say on Tuesday, we can cut all that fish on Tuesday night and get it to chef the next morning. That's my business model. That's really what I do really well at. But now, the last 5 years, we've really looked at frozen stuff, frozen portions, just simple frozen portions, or even right now we're working on a value-added product where you have a pre-marinated piece of fish you can throw in the oven and it's ready to go. But the key is the freezing, because it takes that fish, the seasonality, and spreads it out throughout the course of the year. And that's something we're going to have to really expand on going forward, because we're always going to do fresh fish, but you can't rely on certain things anymore. And so getting that seasonality captured in a frozen packet, in a freezer, as long as customers are good with it, that's what we're going to have to do.
You have anything to add about how temperature, any more to add about how temperature might affect availability of certain seafood products that you'd like to take to people?
I think temperature definitely plays a part in it. I'm not a scientist, but like I said earlier, we've definitely seen changes in the fish availability throughout the course of the year, particularly the last 2 years. But even we buy a lot of aquaculture, mariculture shellfish. We buy a lot of Adams product, and these last couple of years, whether it's temperature or salinity related, we've had a lot of mortality in the shellfish industry. I don't know if any of y'all read about it, but there's always been some mortality, but in the last 2 years, it's like entire farms are getting devastated. So, and I would assume it's had a lot to do with the temperature.
Last question, and then we'll open up the floor for questions for these men, is what do you think, what would you, especially all these young folks in the crowd, what do you think the outlook is for the fishing industry in North Carolina based on the changes that you are encountering? And so share what your thoughts are on that. So, Artie?
Commercial fishing, most of my career, we had no regulations. You could do what you wanted to, catch as much as you want, put as much net out there. So you had a marketing scenario where high volume, low quality, low price. Now, because of regulation and lack of availability for water temperature or other reasons, you've got fewer product, better quality, and higher price. So you're able to make, I'm not saying as much money, but you're able to make a living catching fewer fish. As far as what we can do with migration patterns, Cape Hatteras used to be the line. The fish from the south wouldn't go past Cape Hatteras in the summer, and the fish in the north would come to Cape Hatteras in the wintertime. Now, they catch Spanish mackerel off of Maryland. A man caught some fish off of Long Island a couple summers ago with a trawl, and they ended up being spots. He didn't know what they were. And so, pompanos, the southern fish, a lot more of them being caught in the summertime in Pamlico Sound, butterfish. And like I say, the winter sink-net fishery is basically over. The fish don't school up, they don't come this far south. So there's been a lot of changes because of that. But you're able to adapt if you work hard. We've got some fishermen very successful, have been. I don't do it much anymore, but had a good career at the Cook Seafood Company, and we had some top-notch fishermen.
Thank you, Artie. Adam?
Yeah, I agree with Artie. You've got limited species, limited availability. I think that if you're going to make it in this business starting out anymore, we've got to be able to adapt, see what's happening, be cognizant of what is going around in the regulatory agencies and in your environment. Already alluded to value-added stuff. There's a lot of things I said I would never do that I'm doing now. I mean, it's sort of eating crow, but we're paying the bills, we're making a living, and sometimes at the end of the day, that's really all that matters.
Right?
Yeah, I think for us, it's just getting the most out of what you got. So every piece of fish that comes in there, what I hate is, generally speaking, about anywhere 40 to 60% of that fish goes in the trash. There's no use for it. So trying to find use for every piece of the fish. We do a really good job of taking what we call offcuts and things that traditionally we call trash, like the collar, fish collars and things like that. But really trying to squeeze every penny out of that fish. And I think just in general, like these guys said, adapting. We're going to have to adapt. I mean, historically, we would see summer flounder in the trawl fishery. Those fish were available in the winter, summer flounder, and now it's probably the most reliable fishery we have right now, honestly, year round. But just adapting to those things, not that's a bad thing, but it's adapting to the changes in the fisheries, the regulations, the seasonality, value-added products. That's the biggest thing.
Gotcha. When I challenge those of you in the crowd that like to eat seafood or go out, can afford to go out and eat seafood or go buy seafood from retail outlets like in Undercoat or Raleigh, just ask as a local. Just ask as a local, and if you inform yourself enough to know that the salmon is not local. So if they say it's local salmon, you can say, well, thank you, but no thanks. Well, you can actually be more emphatic than that. And so, so we have restaurants here in Carter County that advertise salmon as being local. So as people come, I would venture to say they come to our coast not expecting to eat local salmon as the seafood of their choice when they go out to eat it. So just, that's one thing you can do. And there's agencies out there, there are volunteer agencies or agriculture that will try to help you educate consumers. Sea Grant, and they have a seafood specialist here in Moorhead. So just inform yourself if you like to eat seafood. And some people don't have the ability to have a boat to go out and catch it themselves and eat it. Or some people, they can't afford a $45 tuna steak, so they need something else like a Spanish or bluefish or a hogfish. Somebody's working on pigfish, so hogfish. So and there's a lot more consumers than there are commercial fishermen, right? You're right. I mean, we got 10.5 million people in our state. We don't know how many of them eat seafood, but seafood is good for you to eat. The seafood comes from people like that, or either they're growing it or catching it wild. So it's not more complicated, or we import it, which we import most of our seafood. So, all right. So one last thing before I open it to the floor. When I started talking about climate change and global warming, before resiliency wasn't even a word I heard out of university or government officials, when I was working at the aquarium and when I was working in the Division of Fisheries, is, fish adapt. So fish are resilient. So fish is not real complicated, even though I spent 6 years of my life studying them. They're going to go where they're comfortable. They're going to go where there's food. They're going to go where there's protection. And they're going to go to make babies. That's it. That's it. They got no political agenda. The same thing with birds. So when I see cranes or you see roseate spoonbills at the Cape, well, something's changing. So that's my little ecotour business. And so when you see the flounder like Hardy tell you, they no longer come past Ocracoke, they no longer come past Hatteras, and that's just my generation, and I'm not that old, believe it or not, even though I look old. All right? They don't do that anymore. Striped bass do not come down here in any numbers. So I can take as a biologist, they probably as a biologist, they don't come down here anymore because they're going to go to those 4 things I told you about. Spiny dogfish have been coming down in the numbers that they were. So they call those horn dogs or horn sharks. So anyway, so those are facts. And so you glean from what these men tell you, and if you're a university person, you go, well, look, let's document that either through oral history or through actual quantitative studies. And you need to say, well, what do we do about it? Do we allow regulatory regimes to be flexible? Like these men are being flexible? The answer is no. Most of the time you don't. You put regulatory regimes in boxes. You manage croaker, you manage spot, you manage spiny dogfish, you manage mahi-mahi, and all the while you're importing whatever you can, whatever our government allows. And so that has to change for you young people. Otherwise, it makes it more and more difficult for somebody like this young man, Marty's getting out of it, to keep doing what they do. So, questions from the crowd? Aaron, you got one?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Yep, I've got my time. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, thank you, I'm on the clock, girl.
What do you see in Carteret County for value-added facilities or efforts?
I know a little bit, but y'all go ahead.
Why don't you answer that one, Jess? You might be more up to speed with some.
Well, the main thing is aquaculture. You know, so when they're selling individual oysters, so used to be, our seafood used to go bulk by volume, and Hardy can speak to that. He tried to create a new business model where he takes it to consumers in the inland part of our state. Most of our seafood went to New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., wherever else, anybody in mass, and it was sold profits pennies on the pound. Now, what's happening is you're getting more direct marketing. So you got a place like Blue Ocean, ABC Food, Capt fishermen will go, they're properly licensed, sell it to them, and they sell it right to the restaurant. So you and I could go inspect a seafood product that was caught, maybe caught off of Carter County. The next thing they're doing is a freezing, like flounder. The summer flounder are okay. So we have 3 species of flounder. Most people don't know that. The southern flounder, science says they're in trouble. That's where these men said the flounder regulations put them down and made them change their business model. But that's southern flounder, that's an inside flounder. The ocean flounder is summer flounder, and that based on monitoring, the population's healthy. But it's a cold water species. So they're not coming down, so our fishermen have to go up off Massachusetts and come back. Well, our northern neighbors are trying to prevent us from doing that. They want the flounder to go more to New York, Massachusetts, wherever. So what's happening is we're bringing the flounder back and freezing it. So when you go get flounder at a local restaurant, there might be a chance, likelihood that it is summer flounder and it was caught by Carter County fishermen.
Do we have a freezing facility in Carteret?
We do not have a freezing facility, so that is something governments have chosen in some states, and especially like Alaska, to co-op or to create a freezer facility or facilities to store seafood to make it available. Right now, it just depends on private people. So to answer your question, in Carter County, we do not. And there's been a talk of doing that for the last 25 years, especially for shrimp. He talks about the shrimp, you know, they come and go, but they come in big waves. Right now, shrimp are running hard. We have 3 species of shrimp. The browns are getting big enough, the summer shrimp are getting big enough now that a lot of consumers will like it. The greentails will catch up. What do you do with all that volume? Because the price collapses. If you study business, supply and demand. So why couldn't you freeze those, process them and freeze those? And the answer is you could. Because we import 85% plus of our shrimp in America. We're the major consumer of shrimp in the world. But yet most of our shrimp comes from other countries. So that's another thing. Other questions? Like y'all came to listen to them. You didn't come to listen to me. But I did learn a little bit about it in my career, and I'm still passionate about my state. I've never lived in another state, and I'm passionate about the coastal area.
I'm just curious that hot ocean temperatures and increasing pollution from development and all chicken farms that are growing in eastern North Carolina as well. Are you seeing lots of oxygen issues and sort of major?
So the question, everybody here, because are you seeing a lot of oxygen issues? Is that the question? Yeah. Question, answer.
I just read there was a fish kill on the Neuse River, Upper Neuse River the other day. I'll say, as far as like water quality, and I've said this in other talks, like that's the one thing we don't talk enough about is water quality. I know there's lots of good organizations that are doing good work, but that should be like the foremost main concern for everybody. And Adam's very aware of this, but I feel like we see more shutdowns for shellfish harvesting. Because for y'all to know that the state is broken up into shellfish harvest zones, and then whenever they get a certain threshold of rain, they close it down, that zone. And I've been selling agricultural oysters since 2012, and it really feels like we're seeing way more shutdowns and water quality issues. And I've even spoken to some legislators about it, but usually feel like it goes in one ear out the other. But I mean, that's like the biggest concern. That's like the thing I'm probably most concerned about, honestly. I've been reading all about the Albemarle Sound this year and how many water quality issues they have there. And it seems to be, I used to live on the Albemarle Sound, and the last 3 years, it seems like it's become a major issue each summer.
Anybody else on the oxygen?
I'll say, like Rob was saying, there's a fish kill at the Upper Neuse. Kind of blessed not to have seen that here locally, but you know, that could possibly occur. I mean, we've got one of the largest farms east of the Mississippi in Carteret County. So depending on what they may do, may affect a lot of different things around this area. So we just hope and pray that everybody does right.
And I spent about 15 years of my career working those issues. And what happens, scientifically we know the rivers like the Pamlico and the Neuse, they turn anoxic or hypoxic, low oxygen. So what does that do based on what I told you, fish look for comfort, or they move. So the science has shown that the small fish, the juvenile will move out of the area, out of the anoxic zone. So if you don't have small fish, if you have big fish that they would like to catch and eat, the answer was probably no. The science hasn't shown that, as far as our knowledge. And then you have capture fisheries called crab fishery, which is one of our most important fisheries. So the crab gets captured in the pot, the anoxic goes through it, it dies. So what happens, the fisherman can't sell his catch, so the fisherman has to move his pots. Well, the short answer back to your question, the crab fisheries in the Pamlico and Neuse are doing terrible. And I would venture to say it's mainly due to the heat and the low oxygen. So, and crabs are suffering. They're going to come out with new regulations on crabs. So they're going to decrease the amount being caught because the population is in trouble. Now, is it due to the environment? Is it due to fishing? Both? That's somebody lost the word to me. We have to answer that one. One more time for one more question. Thank you. Let's give these men a hand.